show you now, baby. It can happen to you.
Hey, welcome back to my channel. This is Dave. So, FM Station, my band had a gig this weekend on Saturday. We played an end of summer barbecue, and we finished, one of the last three encores we did was Lonely as the Night, so I thought I would play the solo portion there for you. I've been getting a lot of great comments and a lot of great feedback, just about all the different stuff, the Steely Dan stuff, and talks about jazz, and I'm not here to try to fool anybody. I'm not a huge jazzer. I'm not so much into the playing of it as I really enjoy listening to it. So like I can listen to a lot of jazz and I really like it, but it doesn't drive me to pick up the instrument. And you know, there's so many bands that are like that, where I listen to them and I'm like, yeah, I'm just not interested in playing that. And, you know, I was a huge fan of The Cure, I remember, in the 90s. Late 80s, early 90s. From Kiss Me, which I think was 87, to Disintegration, and then Wish had some pretty good songs. Actually, the outtakes on that album were better. But I never picked up the guitar and was like, oh, I got to learn that riff in that song. It was more like for my listening. And the funny thing is, like, I liked the Smiths around the same time, and I was really into Johnny Marr's playing, and when I heard him play, it made me want to run and figure out what was that chord, what is he doing there, what two chords are being played. So it's just interesting. So there's stuff that we listen to for pleasure, and then there's stuff we listen to but we also want to emulate. And, you know, it talks about what our influences are. When people ask me what's my influence, I mean, I'm influenced by everything I hear. I'm influenced by, Jimmy Page and Van Halen because I love them and love their tone, but at the same time, I'm influenced by, Brent Mason, who's on every damn country song, because his playing is fantastic. I mean, you want to hear a great country playing, listen to the song Mercury Blues by Alan Jackson. Brent Mason's solos in that song are just, it's a lesson in country music playing. I really haven't posted anything since my Walter Becker passing story, but it's very interesting to me because I've been reading like comments and stuff, and I feel like some people feel the opposite way that I feel. You know, they like that Walter had a bigger play in the music portion of the band than I think, and I definitely think in the early days Walter was definitely more writing some of the music. But I think if you listen to the later jazzy stuff, just as if you would listen to Kamakiriad and the Nightfly, you could listen to an album like, what's it called? 11 Songs of Whack, or whatever the hell his album was called there in 94. And you can definitely hear that he is much more into the simpler chord structures, you know. Almost like if you listen to a song like Your Gold Teeth Part 2, that whole intro, you can hear that that's all Donald Fagen. And then when it gets to the verses, to the boom, to the G to A section where it plays kind of like add 9 chords back and forth, you can totally hear that's Walter. So, and very much like the Beatles, I think you can pick out, at least for me, what I feel is their influence in the certain songs. But I just find it interesting that other people hear it, like some people were writing things that were saying like the complete opposite of how I feel about, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. But it just didn't, if I was to be like an investigative guy and be like, well, if I listen to the Nightfly, I can hear Gaucho. I mean, the Nightfly sounds like the next step after Gaucho. It's like the common, like you can hear all the tie-ins. Whereas the next album, what is that? Kamakiriad. Anyways, some interesting comments going around there. Somebody got upset about my Pat Martino comment. And if I went back and listened, and I said Pat Martino's a great player. My problem with Pat Martino is he doesn't understand the power of the melody. And, this person brought up John Coltrane, and it's like, well, if you listen to Coltrane, before Coltrane goes off on that tirade in Giant Steps, he's playing that ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da, and he's nailing it. And it's like right on. There's a melody there. You can walk away singing it. I can't, and I can walk away singing. If somebody asks me about a Coltrane song, I can walk away and have them sing it, whether it's Blue Train or Countdown. When you get to the Pat Martino stuff, there's no melody. There's not a strong enough melody. And then I noticed even in the melodic line in the beginning, he's trying to play rhythmically with the melody to try to make it, more whatever difficult, or how he's counting it, but it just comes off as inaccessible. And that's where I was with Pat Martino, because I just feel like, yeah, he's a great teacher, but I just feel like his own stuff, he just doesn't have that it factor of being like, wow, that guy can, connect with a lot of different people. And I brought up like record sales and the argument of record sales. And the argument of record sales is not to compare Madonna or Lady Gaga. You can see how out of touch with pop I am. Madonna, Lady Gaga, Taylor Swift. It's not to compare those record sales to the record sales of jazz musicians. What I'm merely saying when I bring up the argument of record sales is you can look at it among their peers. So when you look at like records from like the 50s, late 50s, early 60s Blue Note stuff, you can see that Kind of Blue is a pretty important record, because not only were the sales higher than most of the other albums in that generation, but it tells you that it's reaching an audience and it's doing something. It's making people go out and spend their money and buy that music, and people connect with it. And it's more about that connection. So when I bring up like record sales, I'm really talking about with like-minded artists. Now, of course, if somebody's going to sit there and tell me that Jimi Hendrix was the most important guitar player, which I personally don't believe, I could merely just say, look at Led Zeppelin's record sales. Led Zeppelin reached 400 million people worldwide. Hendrix maybe 65, maybe it's just, in that argument, I would compare. But again, we're still comparing like artists. We're not going that far and saying that we're comparing Taylor Swift's records to any band that's not in the genre. That's not the point. I am merely pointing out that, a guy like Miles Davis, who sold a lot of records in a certain few of those albums, and some other artists that sold, Herbie Hancock in the 60s, the Blue Note stuff sold some great, I can't think of the name of the album, Speak as a Child, maybe. There was one that had Cantaloupe Island, Emperor Islands or something. I can't really remember off the top of my head. But anyways, it's he reached an audience, so much to the point that in like 90s, early 90s, that band Us Three that went and took they made Cantaloupe Island, Cantaloupe, and they threw in, they put a beat to it and whatnot. That just goes to show you how strong the melody was in the Herbie Hancock song. And here's a kid in his early 20s playing, jazz, and that's what he came up with. So that's really where my thought was on the Pat Martino thing. I bought the new OCD pedal from Full Tone, and I bought it because it had a buffer in it, and Mike Fuller kind of was going on about how he thinks his buffer circuit's great. And I'll give it a shot, because I have a buffer. I have a Wampler buffer, and to me it's like a waste of a pedal space, and I'd much rather have something that could do something besides buff. And, just so you understand, if you're playing a pedal board where there's always a pedal on, you don't need a buffer. That is the buffer. The fact is, if you have a few pedals and you play a lot with nothing on, well, then you need a buffer to buffer the circuit. But if you're playing something with something on, that is the buffer. That becomes the buffer. A pedal on is a buffer. So, with that being said, I'm going to go redo my board a little bit. I also ordered a Bombastortion from Jeff Coleman, the Jeff Coleman pedal from, I don't know how you pronounce it, Jurek, Jernick. I think it's Jernick or something like that. But he makes the gristle pedal for Greg Koch. But for the most part, I heard Steve Lukather using this pedal, and I was like, well, I should get it because I need another drive because I took the Secret Freak off my board. I mean, it's no secret. I don't like it. I see a lot of people buying now this Line 6 wireless system. And, it's a great, cool system, except for the fact that it's like this long, bulbous thing. And they say, oh, it's small. But yeah, you stick it in a Fender jack and you got a big black thing sitting there. And like, I would have much rather had it. Even if they could make it a couple of inches long, I could put the cord in my pocket. I'd be much better off. It just looks silly. It looks, it's the same look that when people put those tuners on their headstocks. And the reason why I don't use a headstock tuner, because I just think it looks stupid. So I always hate that look. And so I'll use a floor pedal. Even convenience or whatnot, it doesn't matter to me. The look, it looks, it doesn't look very rock and roll, and it doesn't look too professional, so I don't like it. I went to a store called the Music Emporium up in Lexington, Mass, and boy, they had some Dana Bourgeois guitars that are just fantastic. And after I played a few of the Bourgeois guitars, I realized it's between him, Collings, and Santa Cruz that are really out there making some fantastic guitars. Those would be my top 3 acoustics to own someday. I know I'm all over the place today. I got a student coming in an hour, so I got to wrap it up so I can edit and whatnot. But I just wanted to come out, play something, and I'll be making more videos. I have more time off. I just had a super busy schedule over the last 5 days, so it's just been a little crazy. But I thank everybody for signing up, for subscribing, and everyone who likes it. If you don't like it, I don't care. Click like anyway. No, I'm just kidding. I don't care. I mean, it's cool. Everyone has an opinion, and my channel is to be entertaining. It's to talk about things that people want to talk about, to play solos that people want to learn, and hear it from a guy that was out there doing it. And it's real, and I'm real, and I keep it real. I'm not so concerned about if someone gets offended because I say a guitar player that they like that I don't care for. I don't care. Everyone has their opinion. I mean, if there's a guy I know and he's like, Hendrix wrote the book. He is the only one who graduated the school, and he's like so up Hendrix's ass. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't care. I don't care for Hendrix. It wasn't my thing. I was too young. I was born in 68. So when I sit there and I think about Hendrix, when I was in high school and everyone was into Hendrix, they were all into songs like Purple Haze, which I hated. I hated Foxy Lady. I later got into stuff like Bold as Love and Castles Made of Sand, and which I think are beautiful songs. One Rainy Wish I think is fantastic. I think Band of Gypsies is great. But in general, I just don't care. I think if you want to get the best Hendrix album, in my opinion, go buy Bridge of Sighs by Robin Trower. It's all the goodness of Hendrix, but with songs and a voice of a guy that I like to listen to. And, people could say, oh, that's blasphemy, and that's whatever. I don't care. It's just my opinion. I'm much more of a Jimmy Page guy. I love the alternate tunings. I love the mind that he had. I love the construction of the songs. What can I say? But anyways, you'll be hearing a lot more from me. Once again, thanks again for subscribing and liking. And if you haven't already, please do. Very good.
You're right on target. You hit the nail right on the head with your comments, what you're saying today. You're right on the money, everything you said.